This is Micah in the morning. Welcome back to Matt and Micah in the morning without Matt today. He's on vacation right now. So you got me. This is New Testament lesson 25, which is an episode on God's silence. Lazarus dies and God is silent. Before the Son of Man comes, he will be silent. So Lazarus is suffering and dying. He knows this. Mary and Martha know this. And so they send to Jesus for help. But Jesus responds by staying where he is for a couple of extra days, by waiting before he comes. Jesus lets Lazarus die. He lets the family mourn for an extra 2 days before he comes and actually helps. Where was God? Why was he silent? Well, he does it out of compassion for the people. Does God see? Does God care about my suffering? Well, yes. Jesus cares about the death of Lazarus. He weeps at Lazarus' tomb. He cares. He raises Lazarus from the dead. He cares. He loves us. He will raise us too. And by waiting that extra time, the Lord makes it perfectly clear that he is the resurrection and the life. There is no hope for Lazarus waking up unless it's a work of God. And so that's what he does. Now, when the chief priests hear about this, the religious leaders, they say something that might sound out of place. They say, if we let this man continue doing miracles like this, everyone will believe in him. They said, then the Romans will take away our place in our nation. What is that about? The risk, if Jesus is allowed to go on performing miracles, the risk is that people will follow him. You see, the religious leaders think that Jesus is a false prophet, that he's a blasphemer, that he's going to lead the people astray. And the thing is, this has happened before in recent history for God's people. Others have risen up claiming to be the Messiah. They gained a following, and they revolted against Rome. They had small military uprisings. And what Rome did in response was come and squash everybody. Not only did they put an end to this little rebellion of this Jewish sect, this little group following this false Messiah, but there were a lot of good Jewish people that died as well. And so the threat for the Jewish leaders at this time is that if we don't squash this false Messiah, then he also will lead an uprising. He also will cause the Romans to come and kill many of us. Right now the Jews have a pretty decent deal in the Holy Land. They're allowed to live there. They're allowed to do their own religious stuff, and the Romans don't mess with them too badly in that regard. They kind of let them have their own religion and the things associated with that. But if they rebel, then there's always that threat that Rome's going to come through and kill a lot of people and take away the degree of religious freedom that they have. And so this is one of the reasons why they end up killing Jesus. Not only because God said to kill the false prophets, but also because if Jesus leads some kind of a revolt, if he marches in on Palm Sunday, not on a donkey but on a war horse, with farmers turned into soldiers following him, well, he's going to cause the Romans to slaughter a bunch of people. We can't have that. And so the religious leaders, when they see the great power of Jesus, and they conclude wrongly that he's a false prophet, they have to silence him in order to save the people. It's better that one man should die, that Jesus should die, lest the Romans come through and kill many, many perish. But the point that I'm trying to elaborate on for connecting these stories is God's silence. So Lazarus is dying, God is silent. And then we have Jesus teaching about the coming of the Son of Man. And that before this happens, it'll be like in the days of Noah. When Noah was building the ark, people thought he was crazy. What do you mean God told you to build this big wooden box? Right? What do you mean it's going to flood? We've never even seen rain. It had never rained before then. As far as they knew, rainwater or water was what's in the oceans and the rivers. And there was this mist that kind of watered things. And so the sinners of the world kept doing their thing. They kept on sinning, while God was, for the most part, silent. And so what happened is that after God's silence, then came the judgment day. Then came the Lord destroying his creation, but saving Noah and his family and 2 or 7 pair of each of the animals. But God was largely silent, and then came the day of the Lord, the day of destruction, the day of salvation, the day of resurrection. That's what links these stories together. And so it is for us now. God is not obviously speaking to us in dramatic ways. It's not like he shows up in our midst in the flesh. It's not like he shows up in our dreams every night and tells us what to do. Instead, we have his word. We have his promises. We have him coming along with the physical forms of bread and wine and water, all tied to his word. It's not obviously true. For those on the outside, it appears that God is silent. It appears like God is just letting things fall apart with no end. And so we might as well live however we want. Let the sinners keep on sinning, as it were. And yet God is not silent. He speaks in his word. God is not far off. He sees, he knows, he cares. He weeps and grieves over the sin which we bring upon ourselves. And soon at the proper time, maybe in 2 days, but when he sees fit, he will come back down. He will raise the dead just as he raised up Lazarus and say to you, get up and come out of your tomb. We'll see you next time on Micah in the Morning.